Welcome to today's video. You're about to see some of the most fascinating vintage photos ever captured, but we're not stopping at the snapshots. We'll uncover the hidden stories, who these people were, what was really happening, and why it mattered. Watch to the end. Each image saves its best twist for last. 1979. Malta's sprawling water tank. Professional frogman Courtney Brown slices through the blue, towing a 55-foot, $5 million scale replica of RMS Titanic. Built rivet for the film Raise the Titanic. Clive Cussler's bestseller had Hollywood dreaming big. Cameras hovered over this miniature ocean liner while cranes mimicked the 2.5-mile ascent from the real wreck's North Atlantic grave. The gamble sank, becoming one of cinema's costliest box office flops, yet the hulking model still lingers today, rusting in Maltese brush like a ghost ship that never quite made port. Fort Riley, Kansas, c. 1910. 4 officers sip coffee at a mess table while a cavalryman and his horse sail clean over them, dust billowing off the parade ground. These table jumps dazzled crowds during army riding contests, proving a mount could hurdle trenches, or theatrically, a lunch setting, without slowing. Manuals said combat jumps shouldn't top 3 feet, but showmen cleared full dining setups for bragging rights and better remount funding. Yakima Firing Center, mid-1950s. Chief Thomas K. Yallop of the Yakama Nation stands beside his son, Corporal Bill Yallop, whose Iron Horse is a 45-ton M48 Patton tank rumbling across the same sage plains where Yakama warriors once raced Mustangs. The elder Yallop chairs the tribal council that still negotiates grazing and treaty rights on this very land, while the younger Yallop drills with an armored unit bound for Cold War duty. 2 generations, 2 eras of defense, one rooted in horseback raids of the 1850s, the other in steel and diesel. Meet in a single photograph that collapses a century of transformation into one father and son handshake. Monza, 1966. Actor-turned-wheelman James Garner rockets a Formula One through Parabolica for Grand Prix, the first movie to strap 70mm cameras onto real race cars and hurl audiences into the cockpit. Director John Frankenheimer bolted Euro-stabilized rigs to a borrowed McLaren, letting Garner chase legends like Graham Hill at 170 miles per hour. No green screens, just raw track fury. The film's onboard shots rewired sports cinematography, winning 3 Oscars and convincing Hollywood, and future F1 broadcasts, that the only way to feel speed is to ride shotgun at full tilt. Longview, Texas, late 1950s. You're standing inside Billy Graham's portable Semi-Sphere, a 300-foot aluminum dome engineered by earth-moving tycoon R.G. Letourneau after city arenas kept choking on Graham's record crowds. Workers raised a 95-foot steel mast, slid a collar to bolt on 15 concentric rings of curved panels, then dropped the mast, leaving a self-supporting shell big enough to hide a dozen C-124 Globemasters or 50 light planes. When the revival rolled on, crews unbolted the sheets like giant pie slices, stacked them on flatbeds, and the traveling cathedral hit the road to its next crusade. Buckeye Park, Ohio, May 30, 1896. 20,000 thrill-seekers gather for a publicity stunt, a head-on collision between 2 unmanned steam locomotives. With throttles wired wide open, the engines roar down separate tracks, slam together in a shower of iron and boiler steam, then topple like dying beasts. As the smoke clears, boys and men flood the wreck, prying off souvenirs and posing on twisted wheels. Staged train wrecks were America's demolition derbies of the 1890s, and this spectacular smash-up inspired even bigger crashes, like the infamous crash at Crush in Texas later that year. Vienna, July 27, 1934. Armored cars prowl the Ringstrasse while helmeted Heimwehr militiamen, Austria's right-wing home guard, stand to arms. 2 days earlier, Austrian Nazis stormed government buildings and assassinated Chancellor Engelbert Dollfuss. The coup failed, but the capital stayed on edge. The Heimwehr, allied with the authoritarian Fatherland Front, mobilized alongside the army to sweep up plotters and deter riots. Abroad, Mussolini rushed divisions to the Brenner Pass to warn Hitler off. Calm returned within days, yet this photo catches Austria at the hinge. From civil strife toward 4 uneasy years that end with the 1938 Anschluss. Paris, 1887. On the Champ de Mars, for lattice legs splay like giant compass points, climbing past timber scaffolds and steam hammers. Gustav Eiffel's team, Koechlin, Nugier, and Sylvester, are riveting together some 18,000 iron pieces, racing to meet the 1889 World's Fair. Critics sneer at the metal asparagus and expect it to be torn down after a 20-year permit. Instead, radio antennas and wartime signaling save it. The experiment becomes the emblem, proof that audacity and engineering can redraw a skyline and, in time, define a city. Mid-1920s, barnstorming America. Stuntman Ivan Van Unger and wingwalker Gladys Roy face off on the top wing of a biplane. Rackets up, net strung, wind howling at 90 miles an hour. This was the heyday of post-World War I daredevils, when surplus jennies roamed county fairs and small towns, turning the sky into a traveling circus to sell rides and pack grandstands. Newsreel crews loved spectacles like tennis in the clouds, and promoters booked them as headline acts. Safety gear was minimal: ankle loops, a rope belt, maybe, and a slip meant open air. Stunts like this helped make wing walking the signature thrill of early air shows and nudged Washington toward the Air Commerce Act of 1926, the first step in regulating America's anything-goes aviation scene. Washington's Palouse River Canyon, late 1920s. 3 boxy touring cars idle just yards from a sheer basalt drop while families unpack a picnic. No guardrails, only wind and nerve. Below, the Palouse snakes toward its 198-foot falls, cutting through the channeled scablands. Geologist J. Harlan Bretz was, at this very moment, arguing that these canyons weren't carved slowly by the river at all but gouged in days by Ice Age megafloods, 15,000 years ago. The photo nails a double era: early American auto tourism chasing views, and science rethinking how landscapes are born. How do you hear a bomber before you can see it? With giant ears. In the late 1910s, 30s, long before radar, the U.S. Army tested acoustic locators like this twin-horn war tuba. The cones funneled distant engine noise through rubber tubes to a listener's stethoscope. Crews rotated the rig to find the loudest bearing, then cued searchlights and anti-aircraft guns, buying a few minutes' warning. Impressive on still nights but useless in wind or traffic noise, these sonic sentries disappeared as radar arrived on the eve of World War II. 1882. Meet Oldreeve's new tricycle, captured by photographer Charles W. Oldreeve at the height of the high-wheeler era. Tricycles were the safer answer to perilous penny farthings, low, stable, and often fitted with James Starley's clever differential so both rear wheels could drive without skidding. Solid rubber tires, spoon brakes, and upright seating made them ideal for ladies in long skirts, older riders, and city streets. Within a few years, the chain-driven safety bicycle would eclipse them. But machines like this opened cycling to the masses and helped launch the Good Roads movement. January 28, 1961. Giza. Louis Satchmo Armstrong lifts his trumpet while his wife, Lucille, listens, the Sphinx and a pyramid seeming to lend an ear. Armstrong was in Egypt on a U.S. State Department jazz ambassador tour. Cold War cultural diplomacy meant to win hearts where speeches couldn't. Just 4 years after he blasted Washington over Little Rock, he was again America's most irresistible envoy. The photo marries 4,500 years of stone with a few bright minutes of swing. An ancient desert briefly humming with jazz. Chicago lakefront, July 12, 1922. Patrolmen in straw boaters escort a line of bathing beauties off the sand. Their sleek one-piece suits the crime. City edicts, echoed by park rules, still demanded skirts, stockings, or hemlines that hung well below the knee, and officers literally carried tape measures to police the shoreline. It's Prohibition Chicago, but the real culture war isn't in a speakeasy. It's on the beach, where flapper fashion collides with Victorian ideas of modesty. Just 2 summers after women won the vote, these arrests became front-page theater, and public sentiment began shifting fast. Lifesavers argued less fabric meant safer swimming. By the late 1920s, most cities relaxed codes. Curious footnote: star swimmer Annette Kellerman's 1907 arrest had already primed America for the one-piece revolution. Colorado Springs, 1899. Nikola Tesla sits serenely in his barn-like laboratory while white forks of lightning rake the rafters. The machine is his magnifying transmitter, a supercharged 3-coil Tesla coil meant to hurl millions of volts and probe whether power and radio could travel wirelessly through the air and the Earth itself. The famous image is part science, part stagecraft. A double exposure. Tesla posed with the coil off. Then the shutter reopened as the device spat arcs tens of feet long. No one could safely sit there while it ran. His midnight tests rattled neighbors and famously burned out the town's power generator. The work pushed high-frequency, high-voltage engineering forward, even as his dream of global wireless power remained just beyond reach. Los Angeles, circa 1929. Motorists queue to try Harry Rox's Auto Thriller, a U-shaped, 2,400-foot undulating roadway that locals joked looked like a loop-the-loop. Some humps climb 10 feet, and the designer boasts you can take it at 40 miles an hour, turning an everyday drive into a carnival ride. It's pure jazz-age Los Angeles, car-crazy, publicity-hungry, and forever inventing new ways to make the automobile a spectacle. Stunt roads like this echoed the board-track motordromes of the 1910s and the traveling thrill shows that filled county fairs, while tire and shock makers loved the free product testing. Safety advocates rolled their eyes, but for a brief moment, on the eve of the Depression, LA sold joyrides as infrastructure, and the highway itself was the attraction. Midtown Manhattan, November 16, 1942. Commuters freeze on the sidewalk as Miss Beth Pitt leads her pet Fawn, sweetly named Star Message, past shop windows and war bond posters. Just hours earlier, she'd paid a $2 court fine for letting the deer wander free in Central Park. A reminder that city ordinances didn't share her fondness for wild pets. It's wartime New York, blackout drills, ration books, headlines from overseas. So this small, gentle spectacle feels like relief from the grind. White-tailed deer were scarce anywhere near the city then, making the sight even more surreal. Hats tilt, cameras click, and for a few blocks the nation's busiest streets move at a fawn's pace, equal parts publicity stunt, urban fairy tale, and rule-bending New York moment. Manhattan, October 13, 1939. Friday the 13th. From a plank jutting off the 54th floor of the Art Deco Channon building, Alvin, shipwreck. Kelly balances on his head and calmly dunks donuts over Lexington Avenue. Kelly was the daredevil who turned peril into spectacle. A decade earlier, he'd ignited the flagpole sitting craze, claiming record stints of weeks aloft. This high-wire coffee break was part stunt, part publicity. Donut promoters and newsreels loved images that made headlines in a single glance. Below him sit Grand Central and the city's nervous pre-war bustle. Abroad, Europe had just plunged into World War II. New Yorkers craned upward for a few seconds of awe and comic relief. True to the barnstorming era, he worked with minimal safety gear. One last gasp of old-school showmanship before wartime priorities and stricter rules nudged such thrills off the skyline. Antarctica, 1957. A bright snowcat inches across a fragile snow bridge, its wide tracks straddling a black mouth of ice. This is the Commonwealth Trans-Antarctic Expedition, 1955-58, mounted for the International Geophysical Year, the first overland crossing of the continent. Sir Vivian Fuchs led the main party from the Weddell Sea. Edmund Hillary's New Zealand team pushed out from Scott Base, laying fuel depots and scouting the route toward the South Pole. Low pressure, tracked vehicles hauled supplies while scouts probed for hidden voids and laid ladders or planks to span crevasses like this. In January 1958, Hillary reached the pole by tractor, the first since Amundsen and Scott, before Fuchs completed the 2,000-plus mile traverse. The image captures their daily gamble. Read the snow, commit, and trust the bridge holds. LaGuardia Field, May 8, 1941. Not Men from Mars, just TWA. Then Transcontinental and Western Air. Mechanics clowning for the camera with propeller hubcaps perched like helmets as they tackle spring overhauls on the ramp. The setting is brand new LaGuardia, opened in 1939, where airline traffic is exploding and summer timetables demand spotless, reliable ships. These crews are the quiet backbone of pre-war aviation. Greasing bearings, safety wiring bolts, timing magnetos on DC-3s and Boeing 307 Stratoliners, the world's first pressurized airliners. It's 7 months before Pearl Harbor. Defense contracts and ferry flights are already ramping up, and every tuned engine matters. The photo blends humor and purpose, a wink for the press, and a reminder that behind every sleek propeller was a team that kept America flying safely and on time. Bridgeport, Connecticut, January 10, 1946. An Army Sikorsky R-5 lifts off as women on the ramp wave, its cabin and steps packed. 17 people plus the pilot, just to show what the new machine can haul. The war is barely over, and helicopters are shifting from curiosities to tools. Built a few miles away at Sikorsky's Stratford plant, The R-5 would soon be redesignated H-5 and adopted by the Army Air Forces, Navy, and Coast Guard. These trials claimed records for altitude and speed with payload, the kind of proof that wins budgets and converts. Within a few years, the same type would hoist litters from canyons, fish flyers from the sea, and, in Korea, pioneer medevac, demonstrating that rotorcraft could go where runways didn't. Spitsbergen, May 1926. Richard E. Byrd faces the Arctic wind in a leather helmet and frost mask, moments before lifting a Fokker trimmer, Josephine Ford, off the ice at Kings Bay. The plan is audacious. Fly 1,360 miles over the North Pole and back in a single hop, navigating a blank white world by dead reckoning, drift meter, and hurried sun sights. 15 hours later, Byrd radios success and returns a national hero, soon to receive the Medal of Honor. Decades on, his notebook sparked debate over whether he truly reached the pole. The first verified overflight would come 3 days later with Amundsen and Nobel's airship Norge. Whatever the controversy, this image captures an in-between age, when leather and nerve, not satellites, still defined exploration.